All right. Good evening, everybody. I would like to call to order the regular meeting of the Cape Coral Charter School Governing Board. Today is Tuesday, February 11th, 2020. And so with that, if you could please stand for a moment of silence. And if you could turn and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. Madam Secretary, if you could take the roll call, please.
Campbell, absent, excused. Traeger,
Present.
Gunter,
Here.
Metzger,
Present.
Manaya,
Present.
Mitchell. Here. Tisch, absent, excused. Hoagland.
Here.
Jackson.
Here.
Miniachi.
Here.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. If we could have a moment to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting on December 10th, 2019. If I can have a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Approved by Councilmember Gunter and seconded by Dr. Minyaya. Next up is item number 6, approval of agenda of our regular board meeting. Is there a motion to approve the agenda for the regular meeting?
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Ms. Metzger,
Second.
second by Councilman Gunter. All right, moving forward. Public comment, item number 7. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per individual, 45 minutes total comment time. Is there anybody with us tonight who would like to take the time to speak? Okay, moving along to item number 8, consent agenda. Tonight we have 4 items on the consent agenda, which is the request for acceptance and approval of the Charter Board Governing Board Chair's initial and signature on the Lee County District Charter School Safety and Security Requirements Readiness Checklist, request for acceptance and approval of an MFL Community Football Fields grant that includes a joint concept of a joint use agreement between the city, Oasis, and the Lee County Hawks Football and Cheer Organization, and a request for the approval of a proposed Oasis High School Summer 2021 10-day EF tour to Madrid. Is there a motion to approve the consent items?
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Ms. Metzger,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Mitchell. Do you need to present that? Okay. That being said, the consent agenda has been approved. Next up, item number 9, Superintendent Report. Ms. Collins.
Good evening, Jackie Collins, Superintendent. I have a couple items on in my report that I'd like to report to you. But first, I'd like to start with the introduction of our new security guard. And he's here tonight. Chuck, why don't you come on down? This is Chuck Vershave. He comes to us, and he's been on duty for, I would say, the last 4 weeks. It comes with 32 years of law enforcement experience from Michigan. 17 of his 32 years, he held the position of lieutenant. He went to the Eastern University School of Staff and Command, the FBI National Academy. He is well versed in policy writing, budgeting, and now he belongs to us, and we're so delighted to have him. He processes, and when I mean processes, between the hours of 8:30 and 1:30 every day. He averages about 102 cars that come through or come past his guardhouse and stop so that he can write down their driver's license, their name, where they're going, and keep track of who's on campus during the times where campus is closed. So I joke with him about having to pay for his carpal tunnel because he's written about 4,000, he's processed about 2,400 people so far in the last 4 weeks. There's got to be a better way of aside from writing down everybody that comes in, maybe we can scan a driver's license or something and send it to our Keep and Track program. But Chuck is wonderful, and he reports that parents are very happy that he's there. He's getting, great great accommodations. We're so happy you're here. Finally, it's about time, that kind of thing. Very rarely do you ever get a complaint, am I right?
Very rarely.
And they follow the rules. They stop at the stop sign and, coming and going. And I think they're overall very happy that you're there. So during the time that he's not in the guard house, he is circulating across campus, checking doors. He's connected to our video camera so he can see outside of all buildings. So he knows what's going on the perimeter, while the SROs are very familiar with what's going on inside. And he's got his new shirts on. Aren't they great? Turn around, Chuck. Back is, yep. So there's no mistaking who he is when he's walking around. So if you would give a warm welcome to Chuck. Are there any questions for him? We're delighted to have him. He's quite an asset to our team. Okay,
Thank you, Superintendent.
very good.
Great, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Nice meeting everybody.
All right, we had 2 visits recently from the governing board. We had Councilman Gunter come in recently to do a campus facility visit. We had a roundtable discussion with him, and we met with the principals and administrative staff just to kind of voice to him what we think, what our funding needs are and what our limitations are. We asked him to travel around and do tours so that he could really see some of the things that need to be repaired on a very superficial level. And he's going to come back again for a second visit and walk through with the maintenance supervisor. So he really gets a good feel for where our buildings are as far as the maintenance and upkeep, what we need to have done, and what we are, and he'll see during the budget process what we're able to afford to do and what we have to cut out. So we were really delighted that he came to take a look and meet with us and kind of figure out who we are and how we operate. I also had a meeting with Dr. Minaya. He came in for a visit. We do that periodically throughout the year. We discussed some local contacts that we thought might be important to give us insight as to the lawsuit that is still in place with the Lee County School District and the Supreme Court. He has an idea of some folks that might know a little inside information. So I'm going to give them a call and see if we can find out some additional information. We also discussed internships at Lee Health at the pharmacy department for our students, and also at Lee SAR for possibly a field trip to see what they're all about and how their culinary department works that services all hospitals in the area. And we also talked about the New Tech Network, which is a group of schools that are already doing what we're aiming to do as far as STEM and technology goes. There are some schools in the state of Florida that we might take our administrative staff to visit that focus on PB engineering and technology. So that was a nice connection that we made. And Dr. Minaya also recommended that we have quarterly meetings with the board one-on-one, which I thought was a great idea. Just so that, we give you this SIR report, we have our meetings, but there are a lot of things that come up in between SIR and meetings. And I think if we met with each one of you individually quarterly, that would just give you a little more time for you to ask one-on-one questions to me. So we'll organize that coming up in the future. I thought that was a great idea. Moving on, the CAFR annual financial statement will be presented April 14th by Chris Kessler, who is our auditor. We asked him to present earlier. He was not able to. So that will be coming on April 14th. I can assure you that the findings were very few and far between. There was one on our general fund audit, and then we had 4 findings. On our internal funds, 2 we disputed, but things that we have answers to and responses for, and I think you'll be very pleased with the outcome of both audits. The next item has to do with the football field grant that you just approved in the consent agenda. I asked that our board consider approve the development of the concept of engaging in a joint use agreement with the City of Cape Coral and the Hawks organization. That's the premise of this grant that we want to apply for. That was step number 1, approving the concept that we would all work together. The next phase for us would be to, and I will do this, write a letter to the city manager asking the city to approve the concept of a joint use agreement, and then to issue a letter a commitment letter for matching funds so that we can participate in both components of this grant. So that's something that we will be doing moving forward. Those are the initial steps. I also met with Councilman Gunter, and he thought it would be a very good idea to formulate a committee, a design committee, because we need to engage with Avalon Engineering and revamp our original concept plan that was developed back in 2010 for the space behind the schools. We need to start with the football fields, that would be phase one, and develop them, come up with a concept plan for implementation in phases. So I have put together my ideas for committee members to work with Avalon to engage in the design concept. Councilman Gunter has volunteered to be our board representative because he has a construction background and give us insight that we don't have. I've also asked the high school athletic director, the high school football coach, the high school principal to be involved in that development. The Hawks, our friend Shannon here, who is part of the Hawks Association, but also is the president of the School Advisory Committee for the high school. So I have a tentative list. Our business manager should also be a part of it. Our director of procurement should be a part of that. And a representative from our foundation should also be part of that driving committee that works on the design. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. I think that is a very good way to begin. Now, we have to remember our deadline for this grant is the August 30th, so time is going to be of the essence. So I'm hoping now that we can move forward and we can ask the city manager to go to city council and see if they'd be willing to help us provide the $150,000 for these matching grants. So that's the process that we're engaging in now. February 17th, on to my next bullet point, we had an in-service day for staff. That was Monday. Children did not have school because the day is spent to develop our teachers in a variety of ways for professional development. We had Promethean training for all those classrooms that received a Promethean board this year. We also had an anxiety workshop offered at Oasis Elementary School North, dealing with student anxiety. We had a Kagan training at the Oasis Elementary South and the middle school on accelerating achievement and increasing engagement. And then at the high school level, we did a lot of data talks. We did an ESE compliance update, developing a Google website training, and they also had talks and brainstorming involving engaging the rewired brain. So we really used our in-service day wisely. A reminder that our FAU STEM tour is going to take place on February 26th. I have about 9 people attending the training. I've asked Jen Hoagland from our board to attend, as she is on the school advisory committee for the high school. She's also a foundation board member, and the foundation needs to be a part of these talks and development. We're taking the administrative team. And we're taking John Omenson, who developed our STEM program at the middle school years ago, who is a STEM math expert. And so we're going to go and take a tour of their K through 16 program. It's A.D. Henderson is their K through 8 program, and there's a collegiate high school, and then we'll see FAU Research Department and Tech Runway, where they take developments from the engineering high school students and the college engineering students, and they present these projects, they patent these projects, and corporations sponsor the development of these projects and market them for them. So that's a great, it's really a great system that's been developed over time. And what our goal is for this initial visit is to understand what the curriculum is, how their buildings are situated and their classrooms are situated to accommodate STEM at all levels, and especially in a cross-curricular fashion. We don't want to have one STEM class. We want to have all courses in some way engaged with STEM development. Our goal is to produce STEM-ready students for college and the workforce by the time they graduate from our system in 12th grade. Okay. I'd also like to suggest, we're going to approve coming up in new business, the resolution to ask the Lee County School District to renew our charters at the 2 elementaries. It's time. Our deadline is by June 30th. Those charters have to be formulated and submitted. And what I found reading through the initial charters is that the governing board members have to be fingerprinted according to our charter. We haven't done that recently in the past, so now we have to do it for all of our existing governing board members and the new ones that come in. So Kathleen has given you a form. It should be right in front of you. Would you kindly have your fingerprints done? All you have to do is go to the City of Cape Coral Police Department, which is right across the street. We've given you a schedule. They will bill the City of Cape Coral. The City of Cape Coral will bill us, and we will pay for it for you. Your fingerprint results will be sent to your home, and if you would kindly submit them to Kathleen once you send them, I will include them in our charter application for renewal. In addition to your fingerprints, I'm also going to need a resume of everyone sitting on the board, even our school parent representatives. Just a little tidbit to give me a background as to what your experience is and what brings you to the board. It's very simple. You probably have them formulated already. If you've had your fingerprints recently done, we can talk to Kathleen to see if you're exempt from having them done again. However, I don't know if that's going to hold. I think we all need to have them done. Right, okay. So I'm asking, is it possible for you to have your fingerprints done and turned into me by April 1st? Usually it takes about a week or so for results to come back, but we need to make sure that we are submitting our renewal application in a timely fashion. That would just take the worry off of us to make sure that they're in well ahead of time. You can always call me if you have any questions. It's not a complicated process. It's very simple these days. Okay, I don't see anybody here from the foundation, so I'm going to tout the fact that the rally is coming up this month, February 29th, at the Cape Royal Golf Club. Starts at 8 a.m., golf that is, and games and activities run from 12 to 5 p.m. We are really looking forward to this event. I would love to see everybody there if you have the time to make it. It's a beautiful day. It's outside. The weather's usually wonderful. Bring your lawn chairs. There's live music and entertainment. It's really, really nice day. And last but not least, on my list of to-dos for you, this summer, we are looking to host an EF summer camp. EF stands for Education First Tours. It is a group of international students coming from Western Europe countries. We'd like to host them for 14 days in the month of July. We're going to do this to give them the experience of what it is like to come to Cape Coral and to come to America. They spend a half a day in our classrooms, 8 to 11:30, and then the rest of the day they're on excursions here in the area. They go to Orlando, things like that. They do a lot of local excursions so that they can see what our area is like. We're going to put a proposal together. We're thinking that if our calculations are correct, using our classrooms for 14 days at the high school for a half day each through the month of July, they need 8 classrooms, and we would require that they use our transportation, our buses. We're looking to perhaps bring in about $60,000, which would be nice because that would help offset the cost of our transportation, since we usually we don't run in the black with transportation. So it would really be a win-win. It would be a money-making venture for us. We would be looking for host families to host a lot of these students, and we can use our families if we can find some people that are interested, but they would get to experience our school system. Perhaps they would employ some of our teachers to educate these international students. I think it would be a great venture for us. So that's going to be coming this summer if they agree to our cost structure. And that's all I have. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions for Superintendent Collins?
What was the ages for the those students coming in?
They're high school students
All high school.
primarily. I believe Kathleen can tell me more so. I think ages 12 to 16. Does that sound about right?
Thank you.
I can also comment on that program. Last summer, our family had the opportunity to host a student from France. We were approached by a coordinator for the EF program. So this student came and stayed with us for 2 weeks. And last year, the program was conducted at Estero High School. So there were, I think, 3 bus depot stations in Cape Coral, and I drove the student to the bus every morning at 6:30 in the morning, picked up at Lowe's, and they trucked them down to Estero. So this is a great opportunity for us to have it in-house here in Cape Coral, especially since there's so many host families already in Cape Coral. But it definitely was a great experience for our family, and the students are lovely. They're from France and Spain and a variety of countries, very respectful, and all they want to do is indulge in American stuff, like eat Pop-Tarts and Reese's Peanut Butter Cups and anything American. They want to experience it. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity, and hopefully it's successful. All right. Moving on, I know that Gary's not here. Do you want to add anything to the foundation?
I don't really have a report
Okay.
to give other than Mrs. Collins.
Thank you. Item number 12, staff comments. We have Dr. Christina Britton here for the principal of Oasis High School.
Hi, everyone. I have a few slides prepared. Hopefully they show up. There we go. We do a lot in terms of data. As soon as I'm frozen in my mind right now as to how to start this PowerPoint, but I'll get it. There we go. All right. The first thing I know, when we do STAR testing from K through 12 in our system, and this was the first year we used it at Oasis High School, and it's the first time that I am using it as a principal. I was used to a different system in my previous schools. So getting to know that data, I have to say thank you to Mary Beth and Carrie Abus, because they have come over and trained our staff. And they are better than any presenter that we could possibly get from their company, because Mary Beth knows it so well, and I call her pretty often. So, or she'll send me, I don't know, like at 9 o'clock at night, she'll send me a report that's like, you should find this one interesting as well. So what I am happy to report, I think I'm most happy with our math increases from Q1 to Q2. And what you want to see is more, if you drew a line right down the middle, between the first 4 columns and the last 4 columns, you want to see the bulk of our students on the right-hand side. So if you look at 9th grade, that's a huge improvement. A lot of our 9th graders are in geometry, which is a pretty advanced course, but then a lot of them that are in the algebra courses, we have not always, I have a really good teacher there, is what I'm going to say. So she's having a very impactful presence with the 9th graders that are taking the algebra EOC for the first time. If you look at 10th grade, those students for the most part are in geometry. None of them are in algebra. And again, you want to see the majority of them on the right-hand side. So we have some creeping to do, hopefully by the end of the year. But if I averaged out the geometry and math according to what the Lee County District says is going to be proficient on the test, then we are already ahead of where we would have finished the year last year. So last year, according to our state rubric, we were 61% proficient, and at this point, based on the averages for algebra and geometry, we are already at 63% proficient, and we haven't even finished the year. So I have a lot of hope, indeed, for math. Reading, 9th grade on the left, 10th grade on the right. We can do better. This is where we continue to focus. Our reading, we changed our reading curriculum pretty drastically this year, and our language arts curriculum pretty drastically, in that we made it much more reading intensive. Last year we were averaging about a novel per year. In addition to shorter reading, short stories, nonfiction, things like that, we're averaging 1 novel per quarter, in addition to all of the nonfiction practice that we do, because a large portion of the FSA for 9th and 10th grade is nonfiction reading and then comprehension of those nonfiction readings. So we're moving in the right direction, but I'll be very blunt. I wish these scores were better. So we meet our our reading teachers, our ELA teachers, and our math teachers have a completely different set of goals that they write and evaluate after each star. We meet individually. The administrators and I met individually with every single teacher over the last week and a half for at least 20 minutes to go over their impact on the reading, their contribution to our school as a whole, and their goals for the remainder of the year. So I feel those meetings with staff are very important. And then this information has also been shared with staff. Other data, ACE performance, we don't get most of our ACE performance until well after FSA scores come in. So if you're looking, I took the last 3 years of data. The percent of students passing ACE in general is the first line. We have as high as 250 to 350 exams given, all in the month of May and June. You have some students that sit for between 10, and the highest would be about 19 exams, and those are all written. None of it's online, none of it's multiple choice. It is 100% written. Our passing rate has stayed pretty consistent in the 50s and above. Our diplomas have been up and down. The number of diplomas earned usually occurs at the end of their junior year. It's a 2-year program. A few seniors will wrap it up then, but it depends on your enrollment. So if you look at the bottom, the number of applicants for 2018, which was last year, we had 84 students apply for the program. We have over 90 in the program right now in our freshman classes. For 2019 was 82, and then for 2020 right now we're sitting at 95. And I'm hoping to receive a few more. We get some over the summer when we have students move in. So that looks good for long term, because usually if you go by our averages, about 50% of those students earn diplomas by the time they're seniors. When compared with US passing rates, our scores for some of our most difficult courses, when the ACE, when the Brits, they literally have their calls to us from Britain. They inform us of our passing rates. We are on par for these courses especially. If you're within 10% of the national average, they consider that a pretty good job. Global Perspectives, that second one you see right there, is one of the required courses that is the core of the ACE program. General paper, lit, and the English Lang. That's very good passing rates, and then psychology is a very tough course, and we are within 10% of that as well. When students don't do well, in terms of passing rate, when we compare with the national average, I'll be very honest, it's not necessarily a course that we will then keep on the books. We'll do our research and move on to a different course. But for the most part, this is the bulk of what a lot of our students take as part of the program, and we're doing pretty well. A few other bits of data I wanted to share with you. Last year was a busy year. It's in the second column because I wanted you to see the decrease first. So last year in semester 1, between the 2 assistant principals and a little bit of me once in a while, we processed over 710 behavior referrals. That was a lot. This year, semester 1, we have processed 225. Last year, semester 1 for tardies, students were sitting at close to 2,000. And that's when we instituted a new tardy policy. So this year, semester 1, while that still seems staggering, I can tell you that the bulk of that is to our first block because we start so early. It's very rarely during the day that we have students that are tardy, but I guess getting up and getting to school on time is still a challenge. But that's almost a 50% decrease between last year and this year. And I can tell you that that's been quite a bit of work. Does anyone have any questions? It's okay if you don't. Okay.
What do you attribute your decrease in for the referrals?
For the referrals, I want to sound sarcastic, but rules and enforcement of those rules. There just wasn't a lot of that. It's a big decrease. I know, we've actually had time to work with teachers. The other part I attribute to the teachers. We have a pretty experienced staff. I was able to hire some really highly qualified people over the summer. Last year, we had to hire 15 people. This past summer, we only had to hire 6. And of those 6, with the exception of one class, I had pick of the litter, to be quite honest. And we're at the point now where our people recruit other people. So if they've been out in some other sector, either some other district or the Lee County School District. So that's very nice to hear. But having the staff that is trained, and then I have to say we started the school year just different and better. We spent some time going over the code of conduct, the expectations, not always consequence-based, like don't do this or you'll get in trouble. Just what are the expectations? We meet, when I say we, me, Mr. Baldwin, and Mr. Locker meet with every single grade level and go over the expectations. We go over some of the bigger ones that you hate to see kids make mistakes and get into trouble for. But then consistent enforcement. Last year's senior class had 3 principals by the time they were seniors, and I probably was not their favorite person. That happens. So they challenged a lot. And this year, we don't necessarily have those direct challenges. It's just kind of like, this is the expectation. I always say that kids will rise to expectations as long as they are clear. And so whether they like it or not, we have a great group of kids. I'm going to tell you what, these freshmen, I would patent them and we never lose them. But they have 9 referrals. That's how good they are. But that's, a lot of it is clear expectations, a really good teaching staff that knows how to work with kids, and then visible presence and the sharing of expectations.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It was a lot of work. Anything else?
Yeah, maybe a question outside of the presentation.
Sure.
How's enrollment tracking, and how would you?
Our enrollment overall in school, or did you say dual enrollment?
Enrollment in high school, yeah.
Our enrollment is down. I have numbers, but I have reasons. I have to remember this year's senior class, a lot of them left when they were juniors and I was brought on. So last year's senior class was very large. We graduated 197. This year's senior class is sitting at 142. So that's 60 seats, honestly, to make up. And that's about what we're down when it comes to what we've dropped. When we pulled the numbers this morning to look, we've already had 2 graduate. We've lost 7 to the district, 14 due to sports because they chose to go to another school for athletic reasons. And then we had 32 that either didn't start the school year with us, we predicted we would start at 7:15, or they have moved out of the area since the start of the school year. When we say out of the area, it could be out of state, but they did not enroll in a district school. So it could also be, I gotta be honest, we have a lot of students that have withdrawn due to healthcare reasons. Some of it mental health care, a lot more than I realized until we really started looking at names this morning. So we're working on it. But our incoming freshman class was the largest they'd ever had. This is the freshman that we're looking at right now, and I'm hoping for the same with our incoming freshmen this year.
Ms. Mitchell? Oh, sorry. We're off the seat today. Councilman.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm a very data-oriented individual.
Yep.
I feel that that can measure any policies or programs that we've put into place. So to see the numbers, that much of a reduction, it's clear that whatever you're doing is working. So I just wanted to congratulate you and keep up the good work.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Have a good night.
All right. Moving along to new business, item 14A. I'm going to put on my glasses so we can read this. This is a request for approval of Resolution 4920, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Cape Coral, Florida, requesting renewal by the School District of Lee County of the charter for the Cape Coral Charter School North, Krista McAuliffe Elementary, for a term of 15 years, and directing the city manager to work with the Charter School Governing Board and the School Board of Lee County to provide required documentation, providing an effective date. Superintendent Collins, do we want to put item 14A and B together. Will we be looking at that for a single motion, or do we have to do them separately?
I'm going to defer to Mr. Moriarty.
As long as it's clear, I want to know what is the board being asked to do.
Okay. The Charter School Governing Board requests that the City Council direct the city manager to work with the Charter School Governing Board and the School Board of Lee County to prepare and provide the written documentation required for the renewal of the charter for the Cape Coral Charter School North for the term of 15 years, and Cape Coral Charter School South also for a term of 15 years.
So that this is more for informational purposes.
Correct.
So this board's really not being requested to do anything except acknowledge it.
I would like the board, just for the record, well, they have to acknowledge the fact that we are asking the city council to begin renewing our charter. The charter is between the city of Cape Coral and the Lee County School District. So, Mark, I believe you're correct. This is just for their information.
What,
Is there any objection from our board
did this,
to not go ahead with the renewal process?
I thought this already went to city council. Was it on yesterday's agenda, or?
It is on the March 2nd agenda for approval.
Is it, okay.
I thought it had already been approved, but
I thought it
there's
was
a
on
lot that they approved.
an
so
agenda as well.
Don't hold me to it.
For city council. I almost feel like it was like in the past week or so.
No, it's on the March 2nd agenda. Am I right, Kathleen?
Because
That is the 120th day. That's the day that our renewal request is due.
okay.
So if the governing board,
So why don't we how does this sound? How does this sound as an idea? If it hasn't already gone to the city council, let's assume that is correct, then I think what the superintendent is actually asking is that you all recommend approval. You move to recommend approval of resolution 49-20 by the city council. Because what that resolution says is that they are going to work with the Lee County to get the charter renewed. So you all really want that. In fact, I think you all discussed this a month or two ago where you were trying to get that ball rolling to get the charter renewed already. And there was when it was acknowledged that it's actually a charter between the city of Cape Coral and the Lee County School District. If I just said Lee County a minute ago, I misspoke. It is the Lee County School District.
Okay. So then, because we're dealing with two different resolutions, can we put together a motion and combine them together?
Yes, okay, so you would be, you can combine and recommend that the city council approve, that you are recommending approval by the city council of resolutions 49-20 and resolution 50-20. The only time that I would tell you that if any member of the board has an issue with that and ask that it be severed, that is a compound motion, and if anybody has an objection to it, they should communicate that. But other than that, yes, they can be handled in one motion to recommend approval by the city council of both resolutions 49 and 50-20.
Okay, great. So then I would like to move to item 14B, request for approval of resolution 50-20, a resolution of the city council of the city of Cape Coral, Florida, requesting renewal by the school district of Lee County of the charter for Cape Coral School South Oasis Elementary for a term of 15 years and directing the city manager to work with the Charter School Governing Board and the School Board of Lee County to provide required documentation, providing an effective date. So that being said, if we're going to make a compound motion, is there a motion to approve resolutions 49-20 and resolutions 50-20 to request that the city of Cape Coral that we direct the city manager to work with the Charter School Governing Board and the School Board of Lee County for the required documentation? There's a motion by Dr. Minaya
Second.
and a second by Councilman Gunter. Any discussion? Madam Secretary, can you take a vote, please?
Traeger.
Aye.
Gunter,
Aye.
Metzger,
Aye.
Minaya,
Aye.
Mitchell.
Thank you. All right, moving along to item 14C. Request for approval of the expansion of the salary ranges and updated physical requirements to be included in the job description for the Charter School Authority Principal, Charter School Authority Assistant Principal, and Charter School Authority Teacher. And this is being done by Ms. Orcutt, our Human Resources Manager. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. When I got to Cape Coral Charter School Authority, there didn't seem to be a policy or any sort of strategy for salary ranges. And so subsequently, I started reviewing what our competitors are paying and hope that we can come to some sort of a decision about what our strategy would be. Most of the time, it's a league, lag, or meet the market. And so when I attacked this project, I attacked it from the standpoint of meeting the market. And so what I did was I examined the teacher salary ranges in Collier County, Charlotte County, Palm Beach County, Lee County, and then our own salary ranges. And you should have graphs in front of you that will show you how significantly different we are out of alignment with those particular competitors. And oh, okay. So subsequently, I'm asking to expand the teacher salary range, expanding our base to, if we moved it to $40,500, that would only equal a cost of $3,000. It would only impact 6 teachers. If we cannot move our base, I'm asking for an extension of the range, to broaden the range, because people, when they hit the $50,000 range on the teacher salary, then they would be considered red circled. So any monies that come in for these individuals, if it's done properly, should be paid out in the form of a bonus. It has not happened like that. It has been going toward their base salary, but in the real world, that's how it would happen. It would become a bonus because they would be red circled and over the top of the range. I'm hoping to expand that range because I believe that even if they are over the $50,000 mark, we need to continue to offer our teachers incentive to stay. And if they're maxed out at their capacity, it's very easy to go look for a job somewhere else. We'd like to continue the good quality of teachers that we have and be able to attract and retain that same good quality or better teachers. So I was asking for an expansion of that teacher salary range to $64,000, and essentially what that would do no one would be red circled, and the increases would always go to their base salary, which would then in turn also impact their retirement. And so subsequently, they're not just getting a bonus for good work, they're getting recognized in the form of their base pay, and their retirement will also reflect that recognition. I also included physical requirements in the job description. I broke them down into percentages, and they were mirrored identical to Lee County's job descriptions. The reason I did this was because when you come back from a workers' compensation claim, or if you come back from family medical leave, anytime you are coming back from any sort of health-related absence, a physician has to write a fitness for duty form in order for you to return. They don't know what the job entails and what percentage of time each task entails. And so subsequently, if someone is written a fitness for duty form that they can return, but they have restrictions, the guidelines on the job description percentages for the physical requirements will help them better identify what those restrictions should look like. Any questions on the teachers?
Yeah, I have a quick question. I was looking at the minimum qualifications, and I guess for the teachers, it could be a bachelor's degree from an accredited institution or a valid Florida teaching certificate covering an appropriate area of the responsibility. So you could have either or. Is that correct?
You have to have a Florida teaching certificate after you have been employed here for 1 year, I believe, teaching. You have 1 year to get that Florida teaching certificate, is my understanding. But you have to have a bachelor's degree. You cannot teach without the bachelor's degree.
So you have to have the bachelor's degree?
Yes, sir.
That was basically my question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Moving on to the assistant principal, I did the same. I looked at what our wage ranges were and compared them to our competitors. We looked at Collier County, Charlotte County, Palm Beach County, Lee County, and of course ourselves. And what I was recommending is that we mirror Lee County. If we moved our base salary for the assistant principals up to $70,000 and expanded that to $94,500, it would have the same impact because we already have principals or assistant principals that are already in the same situation as the teachers. They're over the maximum. And so subsequently, retaining them is going to be a challenge if our range is so narrow that we cannot compensate them adequately. I also did the same thing with their physical requirements, broke them down into the tasks and percentages for the very same reasons. And so I'm requesting that we increase that range from 60 to 75,000 to 70 to 94,500. Any questions?
I hate to be the only one asking questions here, but my question, it looks like that the minimum salary would go up, of course. I'm trying to decide what the budget impact would be for moving any of these teachers or administrators up that may be below the minimum requirement that you're asking for.
For the teachers, it would cost, if we matched Lee County for their base rate, it would cost $3,000. There are currently 6 teachers who fall under that threshold. If we match Lee County for the assistant principal, it would cost an increase of $9,752.50. If we make it just to my recommended amount of 70 to 94,000, that brings the increase down to $6,750.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And last and not least, the principal position, I did the same thing. I looked at the market and studied Lee County, Palm Beach County, Charlotte, and Collier counties, and requested an increase to our principal pay range from $65,000 to $97,519.65, proposing $90,000 to $115,000 annually. And again, the reasoning is the same for that because we do have people who are over that threshold of the 97, and so subsequently, any kind of increases would have to be in the form of a bonus that doesn't impact your retirement. And if we hope to retain our high quality and high caliber principals, I would like to be able to pay them what the market will bear and what the market supports. I also did the same thing with the physical requirements. I broke them down into percentages for the reasons that I explained earlier. Are there any questions?
City Attorney?
So I have a question. So admittedly, I am far more familiar with the city's pay ranges and pay classification than I am with the charter schools. And I was just talking with Mr. Moriarty about whether or not he's had any involvement with this. But all of these people are contract employees that currently have contracts that provide for their compensation. So is the proposal here that as of like the new school year or when we're entering into with people's new contracts that we would be increasing the pay ranges? Or when were we thinking that this was going to take effect?
Yes, the request is for it to be up for the new upcoming contracts.
And when would that, when are those basically going to be due? In June? May? When?
July, I believe.
July. Okay, so that gives us some time. So another, I guess, possibility that I'm sitting here and thinking about is, sometimes you do adjust the max of the pay range so that people have the ability to move upward in their range without necessarily adjusting the minimum. I'm throwing that out in terms of the potential impact that you have here because my understanding is, at least in the city, you cannot pay people under the minimum of the pay range. So that would mean that for every single employee who is currently getting paid less than the minimum of the new pay range, then they would immediately get however many thousands of dollars that is. Now, I'm not trying to judge that. Of course, that is something that can be done. But it should be something perhaps that Councilmember Gunter's question was, what is the budgetary impact on that? And you may want to, as a board, explore that as to what that would be. In addition, I have asked Mr. Moriarty to check with our attorney in our office who deals with human resources matters, because I'm unclear as to the paying of people above the pay range. I know that in the city of Cape Coral, for example, we do not pay people above the pay range. If they would be getting compensation above the pay range, then they are red circled and they would be getting that as a bonus. But I'm not saying that that is necessarily the process that you all should be following. Teachers and educational personnel are a different animal. There are different statutes involved and different requirements. But I am asking Mr. Moriarty and Ms. Prosser in my office to just verify that, so that we can understand the impact of that and where that would play out in the long run.
And for purposes of information, for the principal pay range, 1 person would be impacted. The assistant principal, 2 people would be impacted. And the teacher's salary, if we increase the base, 6 people would be impacted. But there are currently 23 people who are over the range of 50,000. And so those 23 people would have to be red circled and not receive any kind of increase to their base if we're following a normal pay practice.
Okay. And I have the city attorney. Okay, so that's Superintendent Collins.
Lisa's done her research to determine what the financial impact would be if we followed her recommendations and her guidelines for these 3 different categories. The financial impact for next year would be approximately $13,000. Am I correct, Lisa?
Well, I factored it 2 ways. I factored it with raising it to the Lee County rate and also raising it to my recommended rate. So if we went with the Lee County rate for assistant principal, that totals $9,752. But if we went with my recommendation of $70,000 to $94,500, that would make it $6,750. And the principal, the total for the principal increase would be $6,033.60 if we do not mirror Lee County's base rate. If we go with my recommended rate, then it would be an increase of $6,833.60. If we matched Lee County, it would be $11,717.43. For the teachers, it's going to cost, like I said, if we increase the base, it would be $30,000 because there are 6 teachers impacted who are below the $40,500. And then obviously the 23 teachers who would not be eligible to receive a raise this year would be eligible to receive a raise.
Back to the city attorney.
So of course, one of the issues in terms of the budgetary impact is not only what would the impact be this year or next year, I guess, because it wouldn't be taking effect until July, as I understand this, but you also have the issue that every time you hire for those positions, you would be hiring at no less than that minimum. So while, for example, you may have, 5 teachers that I'm pulling this out, 5 teachers that are currently below the minimum, or And I know we have a small system, so we don't have assistant principals coming out of our ears here or anything, but, so the most of these would be teachers. So if you have 5 teachers right now that are underneath the minimum, that's fine, and you would raise them. But when you go to replace with new teachers, obviously, all of those new teachers would be coming in at no less than the base as well, so you kind of have that. I'm not suggesting that this is not a wonderful plan. I'm just suggesting that we do need to look into the, as I said, the part about anybody getting paid over the maximum and things of that kind. Other than that, I think, you know, I think their contracts state their salary, and we'd be able to adjust them accordingly.
Councilman Gunter?
Thank you. What I would like to know, I wasn't writing all the numbers down, is what is the total budgetary impact on your recommendation? What's the total
On my recommendation,
for all positions? If you added all positions up, what's the total impact, budgetary impact for your recommendation? And what's the total budgetary impact if it was the Lee County, matched Lee County? The other question I'd like to know, if you have any of the information, is how often do we lose teachers to go to Lee County? Do you have a statistic on that? And the reason I asked that question, I know in the police department, one of the problems that they had, they were basically a training facility for other organizations because their salary was so low. So what would happen is they would come to the city of Cape Coral, they'd get trained, we'd spend all the money training them, and then after a period of time, they would leave and go somewhere else. So that's why I'm asking for that information. If you have any statistical information, how often do they leave us and go to the Lee County or a neighboring county?
I don't have that information. I'd be happy to do a study on that information and get you that information. In answer to your question about my recommendations, the total budgetary impact would be $16,583.60. If we matched Lee County, it would be $24,529.93.
Thank you.
Dr. Minaya?
Yeah, and I think it's along the same lines of thinking that if there could be some kind of a projection, my guess is there's some teachers and staff that leave due to other reasons, out of state, for other reasons, some level of a projection of what might that look like based on some averages over the last couple of years, right? And then that could give us, you know, the full view of what the budget impact is. And it seems like it's absolutely on the right direction of what you're recommending, but that would be like maybe another data point that would just say, okay, more or less it's going to be this, right?
I can speak
With
to
the
that.
teachers, there are 23 of them that are currently topped out on the range. And so I think it would be a fair assessment to say that we could probably factor 23 teachers leaving if they're going to go somewhere else and make more money, because as the program is designed now, the only way, if it's administered properly, for them to get an increase is to get a bonus increase. And so right there is 23.
Right. I think that part's understood.
Right.
But let's say that we make that change, right? What percentage of teachers might leave for other reasons beyond just the salary issue, right? I think that's the question. If it's zero, great. If it's 3 or 4, that just gives us a view of what the total impact is, right?
We do track that information.
Right.
And we can present that to the board. We do have a handful of teachers that do leave to go to Lee County. We do have, every year, we typically hire from Lee County. We hire Lee County teachers to work for us, and we wind up, we've developed a step hiring scale, but they are making more money at Lee County than they're making here. So in order to to get them to come, we have to try as best as we can to match their salary, and we're paying we're paying a lot of money to do that. So it kind of goes back and forth. They're leaving because of the salary, but they're also coming, and we have to make sure that we're paying them a similar wage. And we usually get close, but they are making more money in the county. So we'll track that information for you, and we can give you a history of who left last year and why they left.
City, oh, that's, sorry, we're off one, yes.
I'm
Okay.
good. Thank you.
Down on the end,
I think that we all seen what large turnover in schools. I think that in order to retain, be competitive, and incentivize our teachers, we need to do that. Just to be on par with Lee County, which is county that we're in, is all that we do. I don't think there should be much discussion. It's just my
that's me. A couple of things. Thank you, Councilman Member Gunter, for raising all the questions about the budget impact, because usually that's my job. So that's great. But I do have a couple of comments and thoughts. I know that we're talking about what is the budgetary impact, but is that just salaries alone, or is that considering their pension and the increases in payroll taxes that we have to pay as well?
Just salary.
Okay,
It's
so,
strictly the base rate of pay versus the
Right.
at the hourly rate of pay.
okay, so I think when we do this type of projection that we probably really need to get our arms around the true cost of it, because while we can say it's just merely $6,700 or $6,800 in salary, we actually have the pension contribution that we have to consider as well as their payroll taxes that we're responsible for. So it's not truly just a small bump there. What I appreciate this, and what I want to just kind of think out of the box a little bit, is that whenever we have approved a salary range or a salary adjustment in a job description, we've generally done it as one item. So what I would like to recommend is that we break this apart, so that when we come back to the board, we're actually approving each one individually, so that we can really get our hands as to what the impact is for the teacher and that change, and what it looks for the assistant principal and what it looks as a principal. Mainly because this is a lot of information all to roll into one big motion together. So that way our board can pick it apart, and that way, again, addressing each one individually, so that we're able to address the teacher, the assistant principal, and the principal. That would be my recommendation.
Are you looking for a projection as far as, most of our teaching staff, for example, is right in the, they're making about, our average salary is about $45,000.
Right.
So you would be asking us to make a projection over the next 10 years to figure out what our cost would be? Is that?
Oh, gosh, no.
Understanding?
No, I think personally what I would like to know is if we have 23 people who are maxed out at 50,000, for example, if we increase that, what is that going to look like for those 23, even just next year, even or 2 years? I'm not even quite sure how far to roll out that projection. I don't disagree by all means that we need to do this, absolutely. But I think that as you move into the budget cycle, these are numbers that you probably need a good handle on. How does this impact 23 people? Because 23 people at a 3% increase on top of their 50,000 that they're making now is significant or close to significant. So that's just something to consider for them. The assistant principal and the principal, I mean, that's kind of easier to figure out. But because you have such a large number of teachers, what's that going to look like? That's what I would ask for.
Are you comfortable with that, Lisa? Do you understand?
I do understand.
Okay.
Does that make sense, Marianne? Okay.
You're looking for the cost of fringe, the cost of,
Well, yeah, but
Yes.
if,
For those 23,
well, because because you're opening it, I mean, that's
they're
your biggest
generally
chunk.
now already getting a VAM. They're getting their $1,400 or $800 every year due to statute.
Right, and they'll continue to get that.
And so what we've generated this year, as far as that expense, would just be similar next year, I would say. They're still well within the range. It's very similar to what we've done in the past with those bonuses. We've done it for the last 5 years or so. For the last 2, especially with the $1,400 and $800 bonus, that's what we will be budgeting for to match Lee County. So it would be just very similar to this year's financial impact.
So that would not be a raise of 2 or 3% on top of their base salary?
No.
Okay, so we would not,
We're giving, for the teacher classification, we're giving a VAM. That's what they get as their bonus, or, excuse me, as their merit pay increase every year as determined by statute. That's their increase. So what we did last year, this year, and what we've done last year, it would be the same moving forward. And we usually designate about 300 or so thousand to that increase that we are required to give each year. So that's why I'm confused about the financial impact, because we've been doing it all along. There's no difference in impact.
so then I guess I'm confused because I don't understand. If you have 23 teachers that are maxed out at 50,000 each, and they're not getting a percentage raise, now you
They're
don't have a
getting
chance of going to 51 or 52 or 53.
They're getting their VAM increase. Even though they're above that threshold, they're still getting their 1,400 or 1,800. They've gotten it every year.
But that's a bonus on top of their base.
That's been a salary increase. We have gone above the range.
If we don't expand the range, then the VAM monies will have to come in the form of a bonus.
And we will lose employees. So we have never given it out as a bonus, even though they've been above the range. So now we're determining a range so that we can establish bonuses at the high end of the range.
Okay, I thought Lee County School District only gave their VAMs as a bonus, not as a base increased salary.
No, by statute, it should be a salary increase.
Okay. All right, thanks. That's fine. I'm not sure about that, but I don't know. I seem to think it's a bonus. The VAM is a bonus.
Their merit pay?
Mhm.
I'll look into that for you.
Okay, thank you. All
Any other
right.
questions?
Ms. Metzger?
Actually, Mr. Gunther and Traeger and you guys answered all my stuff. I didn't have time to turn it up before that. But yeah, as Ms. Traeger said, we need the cost, not just this is what it's going to be. Where are we going to be once the taxes are out, the Social Security, the Medicare, the retirement? I mean, that's going to be a whole different number, I believe, when it comes up to it. I, for one, have always said that our teachers throughout the entire country are underpaid. I mean, they're, as a past teacher, but as a small community like we are compared to Naples, who has more money than a lot of them know what to do with in Palm Beach County. The same, we have Charlotte and Lee, which are two of the smaller communities compared to, where there's more, I know what I'm trying to say, I just need to say it politically, I guess. Our teachers do need to be up to where everybody else is, along with our APs and our Ps. But like Traeger always says, she is our go-to for money and analyzing. But I think it would be easier for all of us if we saw it, pied out or charted out to where everything was included in there. Because one number can be one thing until you add everything else in there and then come back to us and we're like, whoa, wait a minute here. This, in our mind, this is where we were. And now that it's all a realistic number, then, that's where it can be a slap in the face to all of us. But don't get me wrong. Our teachers, APs and Ps, are definitely worth every penny. But on a, smaller, low, budget compared to what, the public schools have and stuff like that, we need to, be careful where we are. Just my thoughts, but thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Gunter?
Thank you. And I'd like to reiterate what some of my colleagues have said. I would like to see like a spreadsheet with the hard numbers, exactly what it's going to be. to implement this. I will say that, I would be 100% on board trying to get them to where the Lee County teachers are. Because if you look at the numbers here, once a person gets to 50,000, it sounds like they're kind of maxed out. And I know if I was in their position and I could go somewhere else and I have a possibility of making another $17,000, I probably would do that. Secondarily, it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, even though that the teachers have been maxed out, since you can't give them that 3% raise or whatever that percentage is, you're giving it to them as in a form of a bonus each year. Is that correct? Is that what you're trying to explain?
They are still getting their salary increase as merit pay. Florida statute requires that we pay them according to their VAM score, highly effective or effective. They have to receive merit pay in the form of a salary increase, not a bonus. So even though that they're making $52,000, if their VAM requires that they receive $800 as a salary increase, they're getting that as a salary increase. So we have not topped them out and just giving them bonuses if they're over the range. We have to establish a range and then start cutting off the salary increases and go to the bonus. So that's kind of why we were confused, because we have never topped anyone out at 50,000. They have continued to increase their salary.
So
Because
basically,
it's a statute, we thought we were, doing the right thing, and we didn't want to lose our employees, because you're right, we would have, had we topped them out.
yeah, so I would definitely be in favor of looking at the salary ranges, because I would rather conform to whatever that range is and make sure we stay within those parameters. Because if you really look at it as a budgetary process, if we got that 50,000 that would, as a max, really that's not the case, because we're going over and above that already. So I would rather establish the range and make sure we stay within that range, because I think for future budgets, that would be a little easier to be able to look at those numbers. So thank you.
Dr. Minaya?
Well, thank you so much for the analysis to put us more into the real world and what we're facing. And if there's not enough time during a board meeting to work through this, and we sometimes set up maybe special sessions or workshops. This is an important issue, very, very important issue. So please, guide us if you think that we need a special session of the board to have a little bit of more of a workshop on this. Please recommend that, because we want to make sure that you have enough time to make the necessary changes to go into the next contract year, right? So if there's enough time at the next board meeting, great, but if you think we need a little more time, please advise us.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I would think that the board is pretty much in consensus, that we all agree that this is very valuable and needs to be done. I think tonight there's a lot of information for us to process. And so I'm not quite sure how we want to handle this as new business, whether we want to table it or...
Can I make a recommendation to the board?
Sure.
That we take the more simplistic step, that we approve the physical requirements for these 3 job categories, because those are pretty easy, pretty simple, just like what Lee County requires for their job descriptions. If we could approve that component, then we can bring back our information about the financial component for these 3 job categories.
Okay, before I ask for a motion, I just want to clarify that the adjustments on the assistant principal have been adjusted, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. All right, so then, that being said, I had some questions about the percentages on the assistant principal. It turned out there was a wrong paper in there. So, anyway, do I have a motion to approve, let me see exactly what I need to approve, the updated physical requirements to be included in the job description for Charter Authority Principal, Charter Authority Assistant Principal, and Charter Authority Teacher?
So moved.
Dr. Minaya has made a motion. Is there a second? And Ms. Mitchell has made the second. Any discussion?
Just one question. This is solely on the qualifications, basically, and the requirements. And we've taken the salary component out of it for now. And
That's correct.
We'll come back and address that later.
Correct.
Thank you.
Madam Secretary, would you call a vote?
Traeger,
Aye.
Gunter,
Aye.
Metzger. Aye. Minaya, Mitchell.
Aye. Thank you. So then moving forward on the salary ranges, is that something that we can table? Do we need to make a motion to table it?
You don't have to take any action if there's no action required.
Okay, thank you. All right,
Thank you.
Ms. Collins? I've got a light for city attorney? Yes, okay. There's
You don't
a
have
few
to
of them.
take any action with it, or you can direct the superintendent to bring that back to you at either an upcoming meeting, bring back more information, either at an upcoming meeting, or if she believes that it would be more prudent for you to have this at the discussion at a special meeting or a special workshop, then for her to bring it back at that, to her to request that and to go ahead and move forward with that. Otherwise, no, you don't need to do anything with it, it can just sit there.
I appreciate that feedback. Actually, maybe we should give specific direction as to what this board would like the superintendent and human resources director to bring back to our board. Any comment on that?
I can offer a suggestion to the board.
Yeah.
We work on our contracts in May for the upcoming fiscal year. So if we could bring something back to the board at the March meeting, that would be ideal. If we can't resolve the issue in the March meeting, then we can call for a special meeting, because time is of the essence.
Right. I know, as I mentioned, I would like to see them, I would like the board to address them individually rather than all together.
Okay.
I think it just makes it easier, so then you have 3 motions and 3 votes, rather than having to take it apart. And if it's just pretty much clear as to the salary range with the comparison next to it and the budget impact to it, or some explanation so that we can identify each one and vote on each one separately, at least for me, that would make more sense.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Any other direction from this board?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's a good approach.
All right, great. So we're all clear then. Thank you. All right. Final board comment and discussion going down the line. Ms. Metzger. Did I miss? Oh goodness. Mary Ann, I'm so sorry. Oh. Oh boy, wow. Item 14B-D, request for approval for the fiscal year 1920 budget amendment number 1 by our business manager, Mary Ann Muniz.
Thank you, and I'll try to make this as quickly as possible. Good evening, my name is Mary Ann Monis, I'm the business manager. This evening I will be presenting the fiscal year 1920 budget amendment number 1. And at the end of this presentation, I will be asking the governing board for approval. Why do we do budget amendments? Well, first of all, the purpose is basically to modify the estimates of revenues and appropriations or expenditures as previously approved and adopted. Sometimes the adjustments are due to previously approved items that the board approves along the way, such as the bus drivers that we asked for a couple of months ago, the additional bus drivers. It could be due to just bringing Title II in line or teacher lead in line. We budget those items, but we try to true them up as we know the actual funding that we receive. Another reason we do budget amendments is reclassification of accounts. For instance, we have the big safety initiative project going on, and we continually do those projects, and right now we're down to the guard shack. So we need to take the funding from our committed funds where the money's set aside and move those funds into the operating lines where the expense occurs. Another reason is unanticipated or unbudgeted items such as school recognition funds. We don't know whether the schools will be rated A schools, so we wait for that to happen, but we don't budget at that time until the budget amendment comes along when we know how many schools actually are A rated. Same thing with Title IV or the TAP security grant. We just don't know how much money we'll receive. And best and brightest, of course. We just don't have a dollar figure set on that item, so we don't budget for those items, but those items are adjusted as we learn more. And then lastly, we do miscellaneous transfers, and those miscellaneous transfers associated with transfers from internal funds. Internal funds are those funds that are raised by parents and students. They could be transferred into the general fund to purchase specific items like small equipment or curriculum supplies. And then lastly, transfer between general fund items. So we may have budgeted some money in small equipment, but we decided that it's not really a small equipment item. It needs to go into another category. So we're just shifting those monies between our object accounts. Our revenues are impacted pretty significantly by enrollment numbers. So that's why we always stress that to keep our FTEs or our enrollment numbers as high as possible, because we lose funding if they're not. Currently, we budget at 95% of revenues, so it is important that we keep our enrollment numbers up. This particular slide reflects the second calculation of fiscal year 20. We have recently received an updated one on January 24th, and the numbers have remained steady. So what ultimately I'd like to show here is that the middle and the high school are down on their FTE count compared to budget. When we budget our revenues for our FAFP, those are based on the numbers that the principal provides. So I'm going to take high school, for instance. They budgeted 715, and they are currently at 685. And what that means is that we ultimately lose funding because we don't have those students available. Again, all of our revenues, or I should say state shared revenues, are budgeted at 95%, and that's per the City of Cape Coral financial management policies. We follow the policies there. And so just a high-level summary of revenues. Revenues are currently, they were adopted at $36,004,023. Our proposed budget amendment number 1 is $35,927,035, and we expect an anticipated reduction of $76,988. And our revenue adjustments will be discussed on the following page. Balances brought forward. What is balances brought forward? Well, that's our cash on hand. Our balances brought forward will reflect a reduction of $192,000. And for that, it's the use of fund balance, also called assigned fund balance. And that reflects an increase of $337,000. It's primarily associated with the reduction in our ACE funding. We did have less diplomas received this year, as well as our reduction in FAFP. Committed balance is being reduced by $59,000, and that's primarily associated with our safety initiatives and, again, the guard shack. Operating fund balance will be reduced by $470,000, and basically what that does is cover the overall shortage or reduction in revenues. Intergovernmental funds, we anticipate an increase of $59,000, and you'll have increases and decreases, but what I've done is I've identified the most major impacts on our budget. So FAFP reflects a decrease of $362,000, and that's primarily associated with our reduction in enrollment. ACE reflected a reduction of $200,000, and that's due to the diploma count. Our best and brightest, we received $303,000, and that was an increase. However, that's just a net. It comes in and it goes out. Teacher lead supply, we typically budget for that, but we bring it to adjustment to true it up as soon as we know what our funding will be. That reflected a small increase of $335, and each of our teachers received $320.49 to be used on their supplies versus $302.90 they received last year. School recognition, as we discussed, all 4 schools have received the A rating, and we received approximately $314,000. And again, that comes into the school, and that goes out based on how they vote on it, but it goes back to staff members. Title II is our professional development, and that reflected, it's an item that we typically budget, but we true up as soon as we get those figures back from Lee County School District, so there was a slight increase of $7,000. Title IV, that's the Student Support and Academic Enrichment Program, something that's recently new to us. We did have a reduction of $5,000 only because one of the schools had spent just slightly under their allocation. And then other miscellaneous state shared revenues, we received $1,000. Capital outlay, or PICO, we did reflect an increase of $14,000. And charges for services, that increased $32,000. That's due to the transportation services, charging more for field trips, for our school field trips when the schools go out of town, as well as Park and Rec billings when the city Park and Rec Department utilizes our buses. And then we have LARCA fees, which we previously collected under internal funds, and that's since been changed to general funds because it's a fee, so we increased that amount by $3,000. Miscellaneous revenues increased $88,000, and that's primarily due to contributions and donations, where $78,000 was originally budgeted under the agency funds, internal funds, but it never went into the agency fund. It went directly into contributions, donations, so we had to make that slight adjustment. And then short-term investment incomes, we actually received, we continue to receive a higher earning yield, giving us more interest on our money. So there was a $9,000 increase associated with that. And then transfers in, those are the agency funds, internal funds, and again, as I mentioned, the $78,000 because PTO, that was primarily associated with PTO donations. On the expenditure side, the fiscal year 1920 adopted operating budget again was $36,004,023. The total amendment number is $35,927 and 35 for a total decrease again of $76,988, and we'll discuss those items on the following page, and that's to show that the budget will be balanced. Personnel items increased by $145,000. And some of the reasons for that is we had some adjustments for positions, taxes, FRS. We bring everything in line where it needs to be. That reflected a reduction of $449,000. We increased by our 2 bus drivers that was recently brought to the board for approval previously. We had a reduction to health care insurance. That was approximately $102,000. When we build our payroll projections, we don't know who will be taking health insurance, so we typically budget at the lower level health insurance plan, but then there are those who opt out of the health insurance, so there was a slight savings associated with that. Teacher salary allocation, we had budgeted $232,000 for teacher salary allocation, and that was reduced, but ultimately went to the payroll lines. And then we had an increase of $594,000 for employee bonuses, and that included ACE, advanced placement, best and brightest, and our school recognition funds. The operating portion increased 119,000, and some of the major items, I didn't select everything, but I tried to stay within that 10,000 and above mark. We had transferred from athletic equipment $10,000 to cover football uniforms. We also had computer equipment of $15,000. That was actually purchased from money transferred from internal funds. Computer software totaled an increase of $43,000, but that was offset by our Title IV funds. Facility charges, we had $16,000 associated with the Guard Shack, and that would be trued up by commitment funding. We had in-house training associated with Title II for $21,000, and other professional services, a total of $31,000, and that was associated with our fiscal services, as well as our employee Christmas party, and that was covered by internal fund transfers again. Outside services was reduced by $65,000, and that was due to a reshift of funds for Title II. Printing, we transferred from one of our other accounts $12,000, and that's to cover the new stationery with the new logo and the new marketing plan. Security services increased $48,000, and that's all associated again with safety initiatives and just an internal transfer from committed funds or reclass from committed funds into our operating account. Small equipment increased $13,000. That was associated with the high school. They had actually budgeted for some new desks and chairs for the classrooms, but it was under a different account, and we just moved it into that account. Teacher lead, we trued up those dollars, and that increased by $5,000. Textbooks was reduced by $20,000, only because we again shifted that money to cover some periodicals and software that was allowed with that funding. Training and seminars, we aligned Title II, increased $25,000. And then we decreased on the travel side $25,000. We were trying to get the Title II funding into one bucket until we knew exactly where the plans would fall, and then we can shift those dollars later on. There was one item that was not budgeted for, and that was a warranty maintenance program on some of the newly installed ACs. So I had to cover that expense for $13,000. And then one of the other things that we had to change was the way that we paid for our copy and fax machine. We moved those monies into debt service. That was a new policy that the city had implemented, that they considered because we rent the copy machines, they considered it to be a lease. So we had to change those monies, take them out of copy and fax machine rentals, and move it into debt service. Capital outlay, we had an increase of $5,000. Some of the new computer equipment was offset with Title II revenues, which had an increase of $10,201, but then we saved money at the gate that was installed at Krista. So ultimately, there was an increase of $5,000. Our debt decreased by $5,000, and again, that had to do with the Chromebooks that were purchased outright. We did budget for those, and then we had the increase associated with the copier rentals that went to debt service. So there was a $5,000 decrease associated there. On fund balance, restricted fund balance, there was no change. Committed fund balance, we decreased by $59,000, and again, that's associated with the safety initiatives. We did initially budget under committed $560,000, and we have approximately $170,000 left for those safety initiatives. I know that we are finalizing that Guard Shack. There's a little bit of work still remaining out there, so we're anticipating that we may come in slightly under with those funds, but we won't know until all of that work is done. And then unassigned fund balance, that decreased by $283,000, and that's used basically to present a balanced budget. So on the expense side, the total reduction in expenditures, again, was $76,988. That concludes the budget amendment number 1. Again, the purpose of the budget amendment is to adjust revenues and expenditures as we just discussed. We do 2 budget amendments each year. We try to do the first one typically in February, And then we have a second one that we do toward the end of the year in June. And with that said, in closing, I ask the governing board to approve budget amendment number 1.
Is there a motion to approve the fiscal year 1920 budget amendment number 1?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Metzger, seconded by Dr. Benyaya. Any discussion? Madam Secretary, can we take a vote, please?
Traeger. Aye. Gunter.
Aye.
Metzger.
Aye.
Minaya. Mitchell.
Aye.
So, the approval for the fiscal year 1920 budget amendment number 1 has passed.
Thank you.
Now, final board comments and discussion, number 15. Starting down, Ms. Metzger.
Okay, again, thank you, everybody, for all the wonderful work that you do with our children and also with our parents. And once we get those final numbers, you know, as the board will go over everything for the teachers and the AP and P, which I believe is extremely important. Like I said previously, I have always thought that all of our staff was underpaid all over the world, but I prefer not to lose good teachers to go to another school for that fact. One thing I was thinking of that I wrote down earlier, and it kind of went over my head. Have we ever done or thought about doing an anonymous ballot to teachers and staff of anything to the sort? I know we did this at the private school I taught at, regarding, you know, what they were paid. Are they, I'm trying to remember how ours was, that was so long ago. Are we there for the children? Are we there for the money? How do we view, you know, our life, you know, teaching these kids? What are our long-term goals? Of course, that was a private Christian school that I was at. The majority of the teachers answered very honestly. I mean, we had a retention rate that was amazing, and then, of course, we had some that we always did lose to the county or to other out of state because they did move. So that, just a thought that I was thinking of as I was writing down a bunch of notes. On other notes, if you have not seen, invites the Beauty and the Beast Junior for Oasis Elementary is Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'm not saying go just because my daughter's in it, but it's supposed to be amazing. I know the teachers and the staff and the parents have put a lot of hard work into all the props and the costumes and everything, but it's at Island Coast High School this Wednesday, Thursday, Friday from 6:30 to 8, I think it is. And we have to be there earlier because getting the kids ready, so my time's like all off this week. But if you get a chance, please go see that. I know the kids are really excited, especially the third and fourth graders. I was listening to them in Carline last week, and the third graders especially were so cute. We get to be on stage next week. We get to be in front of hundreds of people. And I'm sitting there going, oh, I remember when mine were that little. But yeah, the kids are very excited. A couple of them were nervous yesterday, and today are the rehearsals up at Island Coast, which is where I have to run to when I'm done here to get the kids. But the excitement in their faces, especially with elementary kids. You know, once you hit middle, it's like, okay, whatever, I'm gonna play. But, you know, the elementary kids are very excited about this. So if you get a chance, go see that. The rally was already brought up. And again, thank you to everybody that does, you know, a great job with our kids. And the open house last month when we didn't have our meeting, Jillian, my youngest, was so excited to be going to middle school next year, and oh, mommy, I can't wait to change classes. And Mr. Hopper got them really excited about being there, which I thought was amazing. And the look on all the fifth graders coming in, their faces are like, we get to do this, we get to do that. And then as soon as Mr. Hopper brought up no playtime, no recess, they were all like, well, what do we want to come here for? But I mean, the look on their faces, it was classic. I tried not to laugh too loud to where they heard me. But no, that was great. You know, the kids the fifth graders from the school are really looking forward to going and getting a change of scenery, as I'm hearing from the majority of the kids, you know, because they've been in elementary, you know, for 6 years, including kindergarten. So it's going to be a change of pace for them next year. But that's all my comments.
Thank you, Ms. Pfister. Dr. Vignani?
Well, again, thanks to all for the great work. I look forward to hearing about. And Collins attended the Horizon Council meeting a couple weeks. And in Lee County. Great part. Sure, so thanks.
Did I get it on there? Yeah. I just want to say thank you for all the information. It's always very clear, and I appreciate that because I am not a budget person. And I really appreciate that when you're doing a budget amendment, that is like such a small percentage. So you are so spot on. And I do have to do some budgets in my world. And never do I do a budget amendment that's that small. That's fantastic. I can't believe it's February. Yeah, graduation is coming up really soon, and I got to get ready for that. But everybody's doing a great job. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Gunter?
Thank you. Just a few things. First, I want to thank the superintendent and the administrators that I met with about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago now. It gave me a good insight of some of the issues that you're facing and some of the hurdles that you're trying to overcome. And I also look forward to visiting the other facilities. I think one of the major problems with the charter schools is the capital improvement maintenance issues. And they're going to become very costly. So I am looking forward to working with the city. I know we are having a upcoming CAL meeting, Committee of the Whole, in March. And I do know that the charter schools will be a topic of discussion as far as trying to determine a possible alternative to the funding for the charter schools and what we may be able to do as a city. So I look forward to that conversation in March. Also in February, we are going to have another Committee of the Whole meeting. I will bring up the topic of the grant that you're proposing to apply for to my colleagues. And so any information that you can get to me in the next, I believe that is not this coming Monday, but the following Monday. So a little less than 2 weeks.
Okay.
So any information that you can get to me before that, that would help me in that presentation, I would appreciate it. And lastly, I just want to, one other thing. You had mentioned earlier about the security officer that's looking at about 130 some people coming through the gate. And I think you kind of off the cuff kind of mentioned the scanner or reader. I think that's a great idea. It's something that I would hope that we would take a look at. Because if you're just manually writing a name down, if you're scanning a driver's license, God forbid if there is an issue, there's a picture there too. So to me, it would be just an additional safety measure that we would have in place. So it's something that I would like to get some information on to see, again, what type of a cost that would be to have something like that implemented. And I just want to thank all the administrators, the teachers, and all staff, all their hard work that they put in every day. A lot of times, this is very similar to our first responders, where you get very little thanks. So I just wanted to say thank you for your hard work. That's all I have.
Just a thank you for all the wonderful information, so many things to look forward to in our school system. I have a lot of notes to type up for our SAC meeting, and can't wait to share all the great news and the upcoming things. That's all for me.
Let me scoot over
You
into.
made me a little time.
Sorry about that, Mrs. Hogan. It's good to see everybody again. I missed you all last month. Really warms my heart. Anyways, I wanted to really shine some recognition onto Marianne, Danielle, and Mrs. Orcutt, along with Superintendent Collins. This board asks them for mountains of information in a way that's easily interpreted every board meeting, and they have yet to fail at one of our tasks that we've assigned them. So, ladies, you're the backbone of these board meetings. So I wanted to, shine some recognition their way, and I hope everyone has a lovely Valentine's Day, and eats lots of sugar, and is safe. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Jackson? Okay. All right. Thank you again. A couple more items just here for the record. The time and date of our next meeting will be held on Tuesday, March 11th, 2020 at 5:30 p.m. in the city council chambers. 16B, Marianne's got very far down the line, but these are very important dates coming up. The City of Cape Coral Charter Authority Budget Workshop #1 is scheduled for Thursday, April 16th at 8:30 a.m. at the Nicholas Annex. That's over on the other side in the green room. And then the second budget workshop is scheduled for Thursday, May 14th at 8:30 a.m. as well, in the same place. I can't stress enough getting those dates on your calendar, the importance of attending. There is a tremendous amount of work that goes into the budget preparation process that is all done by the principals, the superintendent, Marianne, compiling all of that information. So it's really extremely important that every member of the board be in attendance, because they cannot move forward without board approval. So I recall 2 years ago when it was only a couple of us who showed up, there were a bunch of people in the room and nobody could make a decision. So it's really important to attend those budget workshop meetings, as well as to be able to provide input and guidance